Welcome back to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm your host, Brian Gary. On this episode, host Moon Zappa speaks with filmmaker Alma Har'el about creating, showrunning, and directing the AppleTV Plus limited series, Lady in the Lake, centering women in the narrative, finding the show's aesthetic, and much more. Listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, or Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West YouTube channel. And now, Moon Zappa in conversation with Alma Har'el.
Welcome. I'm your host, Moon Zappa, and we are here with filmmaker Alma Har'el. I'm not saying your last name right.
You're great.
Can you please just say it again? Because it's
Alma Har'el.
Oh my God! I wish I could say it
You don't
properly, but I'm so excited to have you here. You wrote, directed, and produced the Apple TV limited series "Lady in the Lake."
You said that right.
Yeah. Okay. So the synopsis that I read that's circulating is essentially that it's the disappearance of a young girl in the city of Baltimore on Thanksgiving in 1966. Is a moment where the lives of two women's their trajectories kind of collide in this kind of event that happens, and that you've basically created this noir thriller that almost has a upstairs, downstairs. There's a black, white, a conscious, subconscious, unconscious. Those are the kinds of things that I was getting from the story. How do you describe the story to people?
Yeah, I think you said it. It's two women that their lives is set on a collision course, I would say. And then just from there, you kind of get these tentacles all through Baltimore, and really get to follow them, but also there's a big underbelly to the whole thing that is definitely plays a lot with the subconscious and of both of them, but also I think of our society at large in a way.
This is my favorite kind of media. It has all the things I like in a story. It's got the epic thing. It's got the unbelievable aesthetic. It has song and dance. It has suspense. It has some very steamy sex. It has it's your
performances of just the cast is just my favorite.
Yeah.
Every one of them. I'm so in awe of them all. I mean, of course, Natalie Portman and Moses Ingram, but also just Josiah Cross and Dylan Arnold and Ellen Noel and Byron Bowers and Jennifer Magbach that plays Dora in The Club, and the kids. I mean, it's just I really fell in love with all of them, and Wood Harris. So I've enjoyed writing for them in a way,
So how did the process first begin? You get your hands on this book. Are you in a bookstore and you pull it off a shelf?
No.
It falls off how does this thing happen?
I had Jean-Marc Vallée, who was he's no longer with us. He was somebody who made films I really loved. He made the Dallas Buyers Club.
Oh, yeah.
And then he went on to do some very distinct, I would say, TV shows like Big Little Lies and Sharp Objects. Somebody who's very focused again on performances and actors, but also likes to deal with, a lot of other explorations visually and thematically in his work. So he hit me up, and he, with his partner Nathan Rawson, they brought me the book. I met with them at a small Italian restaurant with mediocre food, and we sat down together, and he said, "You have to do this book," and he was like a Canadian, French-Canadian, charismatic kind of guy, and he was, and I said, "I don't know," and he said, "Well, Natalie Portman is attached to it, and she would really love to work with you," and I said, "Okay, you got me." So then I read the book, and I felt kind of a kinship, I guess, towards some of the topics against my will. I would say. I didn't want to, but I did.
What drew you into what was the kinship? It's very complicated material.
Yeah. The book itself by Laura Lippman, who's was a great bestseller, had a much more of a focus on the character of Maddie Morgenstern, portrayed by Natalie in the show. And it sort of dealt with, there was something about the book that, again, managed to combine a lot of twists and mystery, but also this exploration of these women in a way that I haven't seen before in the context of noir and thrillers and stuff like that. Something that I've made even more complicated in a way, because I made a choice early on to turn it into a two-hander and get the character of that Moses Ingram plays, of Cleo Sherwood, now Cleo Johnson, to become a lot bigger. So I was interested in the juxtaposition between these two women. I myself am in a relationship, for 8 years with Byron Bowers, who plays Slappy Dark Johnson, who I wrote for him. And I think during that time, and also during the years of was a documentary filmmaker, and got to make 2 documentaries that involved Black stories in them, I sort of got to see this whole thing play out of like what's the effect of telling somebody else's story as a reporter or as a documentarian, and
so you're having this meta.
Yeah, it was really meta.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm usually drawn to things that have a bit of a meta, I guess, quality to them.
Mm-hmm. I think about that with actors, and when they really kind of embody the role, and how they're affected by staying in that kind of state of mind for that duration of time that they're working. So you were talking about how what's the effect, and this is something that compelled you with this story. That Natalie Portman's character kind of fixates on Cleo's character and is mm-hmm. kind of criticized. She is criticized for using it to further her own
career,
which I think is, I mean, it's almost like you're watching, you're going, how is that ever a thing? How is it still a thing now? It's such a
and yet you also hopefully, and again, I think that's maybe something that I also tend to do in my work, which is I think that things that are iconic have a tendency in film, I would say, but also in TV, to have a bit of a clearer morality. Or maybe like a kind of a feeling, at least, that there's good people and bad people, or that there's right and wrong. And I think that I always actually kind of, pull myself away from that instinctively, because I do feel that, the reality of things and the truth of things is a little more muddy.
Yeah, you also have the word visionary connected to your name.
Hey, I mean, I think
did you set out as
that's what they call people now that try to do things that are different, I guess. I don't know, or that have faith in their instincts.
Do you think of projects as entertainment? Do you think it's your obligation as a writer to have a conversation with the people on this planet, and to kind of to provoke? How do you approach a project?
I mean, I'm still figuring it out. It's my first time writing, so I hate to jump into conclusions, and I hope my life and the work I will do would allow me to explore the questions that you're asking as opposed to answer them. But I think that it depends on the project too. I mean, obviously there are projects in this world that are just meant to entertain, and there's projects that are meant to advertise. And then I think some projects, if you're lucky, allow you the opportunity to explore something, from within, and to discover what's the connection between the work you created and the audience as it comes out, as opposed to impose it in advance and kind of plan a takeover of people's consciousness.
And what was the actual process like? Did you think of it as an adaptation or a real departure from, or did you think of it like?
I think I connected to things in the book that were very strong, and then I saw it as an opportunity to expand on them and to explore a much bigger canvas in terms of both the city. Am I right to say that your father, the great, real visionary Frank Zappa, I think he had like over 60 albums or something, didn't he?
100 in his lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah.
Am I right to say that he was from Baltimore?
He was from Baltimore, and I was going to get into Baltimore.
Oh, wow.
That's
okay.
right.
I thought so. Yeah, I remember reading when I was reading about Baltimore about artists that I loved that were from there. And
yeah, John Waters. And my
John
father
Waters is the famous one, but your father is really, I don't know, a lot of people know that. So yeah, you know, just explore the city, which I've only known from The Wire, basically, as an immigrant, and discovered it had just like a huge, you know, culture, scene of music and all of these things I didn't know about. And but really, I think the thing in this show that is kind of a bit of a mind fuck is that you kind of get lured in to spend time with Maddie Morgenstern, played by the one and only Natalie Portman. But as you go in, you kind of realize how much of it is actually a black story. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't so in the book. You know, the book was a lot more about her experience of that world, but you never really got to know that world. And I brought in 3 wonderful black women writers into the writer's room with me.
And how did you? What was that process like? How did you make
and
that
also
selection?
worked with our EPs. I should mention them too. But yeah, it was a really big process. Boaz Yakin, who was the EP on it, and Zach Shields, and the whole process was to really unravel this kind of adaptation into something that does focus a lot more on the life of the black woman, on not just her death, because I feel like there's so many things on literature and on television that sort of objectify a woman's death or a woman's rape or a woman's murder, but don't really let you learn anything about her life. And we wanted, you know, to explore the life too. And I think people that are attached to the book or are attached to the neatness of that plot are going to be challenged by it, you know. But I'm really enjoying that challenge, and I'm really happy with it.
I'm having the opposite experience. It was so thrilling to watch the series that it's made me curious about the book and seeing how did you pull this off. I don't know that I would have been drawn to the book just from the description of the story, but now I have a curiosity that I wouldn't have had before, and it feels so balanced. I love how you're going back and forth between what's family life like for Natalie Portman's character and what's life like for Moses Ingram's character, and just seeing how the parenting is also a driver and something that's it's part of, it's woven into what it is to have a female experience in this world. Baltimore, going back to Baltimore as a character, as a place, as a location. How did you think about the
You know, it was like I kind of dove into it with a lot of research that I insisted on centering the research a lot more around documentary filmmaking, news reels from the time. There's plenty of it, actually.
Is that mailbox thing
Online.
a real thing where they would the dancing mailboxes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The dancing mailboxes, the parade, the numbers game, which wasn't in the book, and just huge amount of economical life was built in black communities around the gambling on numbers.
So that was part of your research
originated in dreams. Yes.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's really impressive.
Thank you. And that blew my mind, just this idea that the numbers game, and it wasn't only in Baltimore. It was in Chicago. It was in Harlem. But it was folks would wake up in the morning with the dream they had. They would look up in a dream book that they would have, and based on these symbols in their dreams, they would gamble money every day, and that created a major economy in those cities. And it's so interesting in the context to me of the American dream, quote unquote, that people would gamble on their dreams, or their subconscious, or without necessarily diving into some deep work about, I don't know, the shadow and some Jungian shit. They were just like kind of like, oh, okay, I dreamt about this. Here's a dollar, and then some of them would make money that would really change their trajectory because the reward was very big. It was like 600 to 1. So that blew me away and definitely kind of helped me tie a lot of things in the show thematically, because it is a show about women that dare to dream and get punished for it. And I think a lot of women that dare to dream get punished for it,
and watching the women watch the other women and their approach, and to see those dynamics as well. You've got a little flavor of so many different ways women experience just the day-to-day and having a plan for a better life.
And in real life, what happened later on is that, and we hint at it in the show too, is that America has taken that and turned it into the lottery, which we all know.
Wow. That's
how the lottery started.
Oh, wow.
With Black communities. Yeah.
Huh. And that trust of just you. I mean, I get you. That faith is also woven into your story here too. You've got both of these women have community around and support around their faiths. And how did you think about writing about those worlds? What was that like? Because it seems like, in particular, Maddie's character, she's there's pushback for her. She's kind of criticizing.
Yeah, I mean, they're both kind of stepping out of their, I guess, given roles, within their communities, and they're both kind of, people are pushing back against it. People try to punish them. I think it all starts with the little girl who's kind of also goes after her dream. She goes to look for a seahorse, which is what she wants for Christmas, and not going to get because she's Jewish and Santa doesn't, give gifts to Jews. So she's punished for that too, in a way, So, but yeah, faith plays a big part of it, and I think it's the dichotomy between having faith in an external power, right, outside of yourself, that is maybe celebrated by your community or your people, and then having faith in your own instincts, I guess, which can often lead to different consequences. I mean,
and Natalie Portman's character really brings her past with her. There's so many moments where you have these flashbacks, these little moments where they become these kinds of drivers. She's either moving away from that or trying to rewrite history or make peace with it through as the episodes progress.
Yeah.
And that was a very emotional and powerful thing to see. That's a very human exploration. I thought it was. What's your experience with the bringing your history forward? And
I mean, I think we do that all the time, right? I mean, every moment of our waking life in some ways informed by our past, and we don't really notice how much it slips away from us until something happens that shocks us into connecting the dots, So I think that's what happens to her, this kind of blood stain. It all starts with this blood stain from the lamb, and then it sort of like unravels this whole sort of a breakdown, really, that from that kind of grows something new.
And you handle working with children so unbelievably. I mean,
thank you.
You have what's your secret? Is that one of your?
I think it's really easy to work with children. I'm always really surprised when people say that it's the hardest thing is to work with children, and I don't know that that's true. I think that there's a lot of childlike exploration in acting that is natural to the process, and it's kind of allowing for that to happen, and also obviously choosing the right children. I mean, the children in this show, Tyreek and Samir, are just extraordinary talents, and Noah Jupe, who started with me in Honey Boy when he was 13, and
Incredible.
he's now 18, 19, turning 19. He's, I mean, they're just so brilliant, you know. So it's developing a relationship of trust and just being present, and obviously figuring out how to work with each actor in a way that feels right for them and helps them celebrate their strengths. You know, some kids and younger folks need to talk about things and have a need to understand things. Noah has always been like that. I mean, Noah, when he was 13 and now had just a rare kind of insight into people's psyche and like trying to understand them from a very healthy, sort of almost distant place to a certain degree. Like, he's very capable of that from a young age, and I think a lot of that is because of his mother. She's an actress, and she has trained him, I think, to analyze, you know, tendencies of the psyche without getting sort of too pulled into it, like kind of being able to look at things from a literary perspective. She's just very, very brilliant. And so he has these wonderful conversations with me, you know, about Maddie and about him as her son, as Seth. And he kind of plays a character that has a big switch in the show, you know, because you sort of spend on, and now we're already, episode 3 is already on air, so I kind of, you know, see the reactions from people, and it's really interesting because the first 2 episodes people were like, oh, this is one of the most annoying, obnoxious children we've seen on TV. And then they said, oh, when episode 3 came, they said, I totally get why he's like that. And so he needed to really sort of find a way to play that selfishness in a way that later on was understood, you know. And I think he understood it on a very deep level and related to it, and it made that possible. So, you know, that's the kind of actor he is. And then I think we have other actors in the show, Tyreek and Samir, who played Cleo's children, and they came to it from a different place. A lot of it was being very, very present and connecting emotionally on a deep level to what the other person wants from them, and like, why are they not giving it, or, you know. That was with Tyreek. And Samir is very young, so when you work with children that age, it really has to be about play. It just really becomes all about play and make-believe and things like that. So I love it. I don't know, I just love working with children.
So the series has incredible music, and it's perfect for each scene, and the whistling especially was just haunting. Tell me about your process of working with musicians and music.
So there's quite a lot of music in this show, and I would say there's 2 people I worked with on it, and one of them was Marcus, who is our composer, and he's just an extraordinary musician. He's also the founder of Southside Symphony, which is an orchestra, mostly all black players. And the other person is Dan Tenenbaum, who's known as Beacon, who is a producer on Kendrick Lamar's last 2 albums. And he produced all of the live performances and all the music in the Pharaoh Club. And then Marcus Norris was the composer for the show. And the idea for the whole show was very musical. Like, I mean, the editing and everything, and just there's a lot of sequences that have this like kind of feverish, musicality to them. But when it came to the opening title theme, piece, that I kind of wanted something that has a really, strong quality to it that almost gives you like a Pavlovian response. So you hear it and you just know it's starting. And 4 or 5 years ago, I went to Griffith Park with my dog, and I was walking there, and I heard a man whistle, and I kind of started walking like after him, like kind of in almost like a creepy way. I just couldn't stop followed him for about 15 minutes, and then ended up approaching him and just saying, "Hey, what's your name?" And then he told me his story. He was somebody who studied music, had a band. His name was Jorge Vargas Hidalgo, and he didn't work at the time or now as a musician. But I took his number. I said, "Hey, man, I think I'm going to find you one day." And like 5 years later, I texted him and just said, "Hey, do you want to whistle on the opening theme for my show?" And he came through, and Marcus wrote this just incredible piece, and he came and whistled it. So he's the whistler of Griffith Park.
I mean,
is what I call
have
him.
Goosebumps all the way up to my ears. It is so, it's like, it's pleasing, but then it's kind of, it just
very eerie.
Yeah, it just is just the perfect tone. How about the titles? How did you dream the titles up as well, or?
Yeah, I directed the title sequence together with my production designer, J.C. Molina. He helped me out, and he was the creative director on it, and it was all made of these imagery from the show that we turned into these, kind of almost GIFs, I guess. But yeah, it's something that has to do, again, with a lot of themes in the show. There's a lot of kind of...
took some motifs out of
a dreamy, kind of nightmarish quality, I think, to this show. And I think in the writing, what I was trying to explore is this idea that, you watch a murder and a mystery, and you kind of think of it as a whodunit, but really what you're investigating and trying to solve is like who you are, and also what was kind of murdered or killed within you as you grow older and kind of pursue your dreams, because we kind of all pay a price, in a way, and a loss of innocence as we grow older. And I think that loss of innocence, that obviously is like, you can see with the lamb and the child that has gone missing, is the the essence of this show. The trajectory of it comes from that loss of innocence, and then the pursuit of your selfhood.
Yeah, you seem to be drawn to work that is difficult stories, drama in difficult times. What's that about? What
is that about? I don't know. I guess I had a pretty difficult life, childhood, challenging, and got to witness a lot of things in life. Growing up in Israel, a lot of cruelty, and families that survived the Holocaust, and then a country that has so much cruelty in it, in its relationship with Palestinians. So it's really kind of been an upbringing that had that in the background, and then I wasn't even super conscious of it, but it was always in my dreams. Actually, I remember my first dream ever as a child was about it. And then inside the household, there was alcoholism and, addiction and a lot of things like that. So it's just kind of growing up with a lot of shit, and then surviving it and pursuing your own dreams to make films. But on the way, meeting a lot of people that share that kind of childhood trauma, or, women that have overcome so much to kind of just barely, survive. And have to live with that, and it's just, I guess I guess that just sort of draws me in, but it doesn't mean I don't get uplifted. And I think music and humor are the things that always kind of keep me sane and alive, and drugs, of course. And I think all of that is in the show.
You also have, it seems, a love of fish and fish tanks, and I've noticed a few fish tanks in your work. I went and watched a few of your videos.
That's true. Are you talking about Jelly Wolf?
Jelly Wolf.
Cigaros. In Cigaros, there's fish.
There's
butterflies. There's fish.
I thought there was.
There's fish. There's underwater. Yeah, it's underwater. That's true. Yeah, I am drawn to a lot of, like, there's a trippy connection with water and anything that can live in it.
Yeah, I remember in Honey Boy too. There's something with water and the reflection with the light and the pool.
Yeah.
There's. I mean, you're such a visual person. How did you know you're a visual person? How did you know you were a writer? How did you know you were a director?
How did I know? I don't know that I knew. I mean, you do know. You have a feeling, right? You have a feeling you got to do it.
What was the inkling?
What
was the visual inkling?
I mean, you just know that you have to do it. You just, and
were
nobody
you drawing?
else.
Were you taking photos? What were you doing that was visual?
I wasn't doing those things as a child so much. And I think that's the hard thing about. There is a knowing that an artist, I think, or a filmmaker has to have. And then you spend a lot of your life convincing other people that, you're right. But that's I imagine that's in everything. I mean, I think I started to tell you that before, that the last thing I've done before this was working with Bob Dylan. And it's probably one of the most important experiences I had as an artist and a human being.
How did that alliance even happen?
Well, he was kind enough to give me music for my first film, Bombay Beach, and then also for Honey Boy. And I was called by his manager to come and work on this album, Shadow Kingdom, and to make the film for it. And I think, Dylan is an example of that kind of thing that always inspired me, where somebody who's born so far away from where he ended up, in a small town in Minnesota, and knew that there's something that's calling him, not to put myself in the same category as the genius that he is at all, but just that knowing is something that I think every artist has to wrestle, which is like something calls you to do something tells you, and you don't even know why you think that about yourself, but you wrestle that your whole life, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, even now as you're asking me that, I'm like asking myself, how did I know? But it's that knowing is something that will save you again and again every day, because making something like this and stepping into this, which had a size of the task that I have never endured or had to do before, right? Like
so many people that you were directing.
People, like 300, 500 people on set every day, and everybody has a question almost. Everybody needs an answer for something. And to have that knowing and to have that audacity, really, to answer those things with confidence in your answer is that knowing. And I think that you could be very lost without it.
Getting the budget together originally, what were you envisioning, and how did you map that? I mean, just were you already thinking dance numbers and all these very famous songs and all these?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely, you always adjust and you always work with what you can do. I really wanted to shoot on film, and I couldn't shoot on film, so you found incredible creative solutions where we actually ended up having our production designer and me worked, J.C. Molina, who I mentioned before, worked with photography that I really loved from the era, people who started to shoot, photos on film. and we actually painted all the sets in colors from the photography.
Oh, wow.
So when we shot it digitally, it landed itself better to the coloring process that I did with Ivan Lucas, who was the wonderful colorist on this show. And shot by Lachlan Milne, who was the cinematographer. So all of that, like, kind of just you always just have to sort of navigate between your wish list and your reality, you know.
And the aging the women younger and older, what was that? Was that just that they're shapeshifters and you just captured it on film, or was it the makeup? Was there some enhancement? What was that?
Are you talking about Natalie?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Natalie is like one of these rare women who hardly age, but and then that made it easier because she's really sort of haven't changed that much, but we've done a lot of VFX work, you know, that was very detail oriented and involved some with a guy named Scully. Took a long time to find this guy because I wanted something that feels really natural and doesn't hurt the texture of the eyes and the movement, and there's a lot of that stuff that can sometimes feel very artificial and sort of strange because it seems right, but it makes your stomach hurt.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I don't know. She looks young, but my stomach's hurting. And you're like, wow, what is that? So I had to kind of analyze that. And this guy, Scully, does some pretty great work combining all sorts of things, machine learning of older images and stuff like that, and together with more traditional stuff that has to do with, just 2D things. So yeah, it was a really long process. We were in we did a lot of post, and there's so many VFX shots in this show because it was also all shot in summer and it all takes place in winter. And on top of that, the period piece of it all, so like just cleaning all the shots and rebuilding them and stuff. So there was a lot of VFX in it, and it's it was a very ambitious project that I had no way of knowing how big it is in a way until I entered it. And I think that's part of the beauty of being a fool and to reference tarot cards, which I'm sure every viewer here knows about, but really kind of coming into stuff as I always do in a way that is with this fresh excitement that I always say, a lot of being a filmmaker has to do with memory loss. You can't be a filmmaker if you remember every little hard thing that happened to you, and people that do never stay in it. You have to be like a fish, which you said for who the legend say that they lose their memories every 4 seconds. I don't know that that's true, by the way. But you really have to kind of be somebody who's capable of just, having a vision, diving in to make it happen, and then forgetting how much it hurt. Because it does break your heart, again and again. And you have to kind of recover from it and go again.
And what's an example of it breaking your heart?
I mean, the whole process of taking something from your imagination that has a certain purity to it and then bringing it to life with all the hardship of production, but also the world we live in, which is everything in it is not built to support artists and filmmakers. Let's face it. It's even if you have the best support system, and I think I did in many ways, I had some of the best people around me. It's just the way we are living right now and producing things, and the way that everything is. There's a certain there's something a lot more disposable in the world we live in everything we do, and we talk about it on the show too. And it's not just films; it's everything. It's everything we touch, everything we buy, everything we watch. Everything is faster. Everything is made to be broken. So you just get into that, and you're trying to make something. You're part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
then you have to put it out there, and watch it be consumed and talked about and analyzed, and the whole thing is not for anybody who has you gotta be tough to do all of that. You gotta be tough.
Yeah, writing for men versus women, writing for your partner. What's the process?
I love writing for my partner, Byron Bowers. I mean, he's just he's really a very special artist. Honestly, like, I'm meeting him. The first time I met Byron 8 years ago was watching him do stand-up at the Comedy Store. And I'll never forget that night, not just because I fell in love, but also because I saw something so incredibly raw and authentic and fearless in how he approaches his material. And because I don't see that a lot, there's a fearlessness to him, and he's somebody that is always willing to give it all up in a way. And I think I wanted to write somebody like that for him in the context of the 60s, especially. There were war comics, and of course Richard Pryor, the famous one, that sort of turned the tables and went from entertaining, which we talked about before, to exploring personal, sort of truth, you may call it, or personal point of view, and did that in a really fearless way that made a lot of people uncomfortable. And Byron is that guy, and so I wanted to write a character like that for him, and I thought that he would be also capable of saying things in the show that a lot of other characters wouldn't dare to say, because his point of view, even on Black culture, within the Black culture, is very different from what we necessarily see or promote in the mainstream, shows that we see or movies. And he's not somebody who you can just like pin down. So that's Slappy Dark Johnson,
And I watched the special that you directed. I watched on your website. There's so much amazing content on your website.
Oh, thank you.
It's a pleasure to see more of your work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
it.
Yeah, it was so cool. We filmed that in Atlanta, where Byron's from, and his whole family was there. It's a very trippy special that speaks to the spiritually rewarding gifts you can get from getting high on mushrooms. So I was definitely down for that cause, I mean, the more people know about that, the merrier. And I think our show is pretty trippy.
Yeah, where do you get your ideas? Are you jogging? Are you singing in the shower?
None of those. I don't sing in the shower and I don't jog. Is that how people get their ideas?
I don't know. I
should try that shit.
Long drives, or just forcing yourself, sitting in a chair, just yamuling yourself. How do you?
Yeah, they just I don't know.
Make contact with your muse.
Yeah, I mean, that's a magical process that you can't really pin down, and it definitely doesn't come to me from anything like that I can say that repeating it would bring it again. It comes from somewhere else that is more unpredictable than that. To me, I wish there was something I could do every day that could just bring ideas. It doesn't work like that for me.
What do you think is like a blind spot in your work? Do you have any criticism of your own work? Like, is there something you're trying to improve upon, or are you the kind of person who surrounds yourself with people who can do the thing? Do you try to stretch and grow, or?
I definitely think that I tried to stretch and grow. I think that doing this show was a big stretch, and I think that jumping between genres is something that I've been trying to do a lot in my work. Like, I started with, video art and VJing, which was like kind of playing live video art loops that you create in clubs to people that are mostly high and their eyes are closed and not watching, but then once in a while somebody comes and really talks to you about it and you feel fulfilled. And then, you know, I went into like music videos and documentaries and commercials, and from that to narrative feature film, and then decided that I will never have any freedom unless I could write. And I didn't feel like I wanted to write a feature right away before I got to wrestle the monster that is plot. So that's why I did this show, to wrestle that, you know, and to see how, you know, how I can kind of live with a lot of my tendencies, which are character explorations and explorations of, you know, music and subconscious and all of those, with the needs of plot. And I don't know that I won at every turn or every battle, but I think that the result is definitely something I'm really haven't seen anything like it, you know, and happy that it happened. And then I've learned a lot from it about my toolbox, I guess, you know, and also just about my relationship to it. And I think that what I'd love to keep doing is writing, you know, and that's become kind of my main stretch right now.
Do you know what you're going to work on next? Is there a theme or a...
I have a few things I'm kind of writing, like playing with, but I'm really kind of waiting for the show to come out and leave my body before I commit to any of them. It's been, I feel it possessed me for 3 years. And, you know, I really kind of need to let it leave me.
Well, emotion, depth, thrills, dancing, visionary work.
Thank you so much.
The show is Lady in the Lake. It's on Apple TV. Alma Har'el, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I could keep asking you a million questions, but I'm sure you've got other places to be.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax. You can listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. Also check out writtenby.com, the Guild's online publication, for more on writer craft, career, and union life. And see you next time.